This morning.
You know.
7:30, because it took a little while to. 8:38.
All right, let's get started.
Is Raphael coming?
He'll get it here. Welcome. Welcome to the Ramsey County Board Workshop. Today's workshop is a presentation on Association of Minnesota Counties. Courtesy reminder that this board workshop is recorded and is live streamed on Zoom webinar. There will be no votes taken during this workshop, but let's get started with introductions of commissioners and presenters around the table, then the rest of the room. I will start. Garrison McMurtry, Commissioner, District 3. We'll go this way.
Kelly Miller, Commissioner, District 7.
Good afternoon, everyone. Matt Hilgart with the Association of Minnesota Counties Deputy Director.
Hi, Julie Ring, AMC Executive Director.
Lynn Becker, County Manager.
Rena Moran, Commissioner, District 4.
Tara Jevon Singh, Commissioner, District 1.
Mary Jo McGuire, Commissioner, District 2.
Dave Zafran, Administrative Services Director with the Community Services and Support Services.
Hi, my name is Lilian Hernandez, and I am the Support Youth Commissioner Treasury.
Sam Farah, Government Relations Officer.
Lydia Kruger, Chief Financial Officer of Ramsey County. Nicole Bean, American Indian Relations Administrator.
Andrew Greenlee, Deputy Chief of Staff.
Christy Todd's Planning with County Manager's Office. Good afternoon, Lindsay Menard, Interim Planning Manager with the Policy and Administrative Strategies Division. Mahalo Miller, Senior Policy Analyst.
Drew Toss, Senior Policy Analyst.
Ali Ali, Director of Financial Assistance Services.
Maria Ferrari, Chief Staff.
Great. Today we welcome Julie Ring, Executive Director of Association of Minnesota Counties, for a check-in and conversation with the board today. We also welcome and are joined by Matt Hilgart, Deputy Director. AMC plays an important role in bringing counties together, advocating at the legislature, and helping counties navigate the complex and evolving issues facing local government across Minnesota. Our county has a long-standing partnership with AMC. Commissioner McGuire and I both serve on the AMC Board of Directors, which provides an important opportunity to help shape statewide county priorities and strengthen collaboration across counties. Today, we'll receive an update on AMC's current work, discuss the ways our county partners with AMC, and have an early conversation about the recap of the more recent legislative session, which ended a day ago. So with that, I will turn it over to our presenters.
Thank you so much, Commissioner McMurtry. Really excited to be here with you today. I did put together some PowerPoint slides as really a guide sort of to keep me on task. For those of you that I've had the chance to work with in the past, you know that I sometimes get really excited about the content and start meandering. So this will keep me focused, but I'm really hoping to have a conversation with you about the partnership between Ramsey County and AMC, and would encourage you to engage throughout. And the first few slides we'll probably run through fairly quickly, but as we get into more content, certainly we can have conversation there at the end, whatever works best for all of you. So my plan today, and I know you all have copies of the slides, we have a couple other handouts that we may refer to that were sent ahead of time, is to talk very briefly at a high level about AMC, who we are, what we do, how we get our work done, how we've partnered with and supported Ramsey County in the past, and then ways for Ramsey County to engage in shaping AMC into the future. And then, hot off the press, you get Matt Hilgart to tell you everything we know about what just happened at the Capitol at a fairly detailed level. The team has taken a dive in. If you have questions, we're happy to jump into what area of content you're interested in. So before I start with the slides, any questions or anything else you would like me to note? All right, then we will get started in the most important spot, which is AMC's mission. But before I even read our mission to you or let you read our mission, I have to actually start this part of the presentation with a shout out to Ramsey County. So I'm going to talk a lot about current and future, but I'm going to also touch a little bit on the past. And when I was the new AMC Executive Director, when I had my first full year as Executive Director, former Ramsey County Commissioner Tony Carter was the association's president. And so in our first year under her leadership, we did a pretty significant revamp of the association to get it to the form that you engage with today. We rewrote our mission, vision, values. We did a full rewrite of our bylaws. We restructured the board of directors. We restructured our committee structure. There was a lot of work that happened under Commissioner Carter. And so I feel compelled to give her credit for that, not only as someone who was a very kind mentor to me when I was new in this job, but who really led the board through a lot of change. And I think of that every time I particularly see the mission and vision, because those were, as boards do, every word matters. And those were developed by our board, but there are a couple of words in there that I particularly remember Commissioner Carter's input and influence on seeing. So our mission today is to unite Minnesota's counties to achieve public service excellence. That's why we exist. Our vision and what we hope to achieve by existing is that Minnesota counties are trusted partners in strengthening communities, and that we help to provide you and your staff with the tools you need to do your job optimally. Our values, and I'm going to spend just a couple more minutes on this slide. Our values are not only intended to be values for our board of directors and our staff, but they're really intended to be values of the association and to lead the way we work as an association together, like values should. And so again, the values themselves were selected by the board. The language surrounding them is important to us, though I'm not going to read it to you. But what I thought might be interesting would actually be for me to just spend a minute bringing these values alive by talking a little bit about some recent work we've done that I think lean into these values, or the things that come to mind when I think of these values in the current time. So leading the way is really about the words that strike me here. It's about being a proactive group, and that we try to, by staying in close contact with counties and working collaboratively with you, we try to not only address the issues that are right in front of us, that are even on the horizon, but we talk a lot about the things that are just beyond the horizon and maybe even still a little bit out of focus because they're just a little too far out. But that we try to identify and think about what we can bring to the table for those issues. And it's our goal to do this as an association, but also to help provide the tools and skills for county elected officials and staff to be able to do the same within their organizations and their communities. So leading the way, thinking proactively, trying to be ahead of the curve. The example that always comes to my mind is the work that we did to create a cannabis task force several years before Minnesota really began to advance that legislation. So I'm going to talk a fair amount about what we learned by being engaged in NACO and seeing what's happening nationally is helping us to see that horizon. And obviously there was a lot of activity around cannabis legalization across the country before Minnesota dove into that policy. And so we have the benefit of thinking and learning from other states about what do counties need to be thinking about when it comes to this kind of policy. That's our corner of the world. That's what we care about. And we pulled together a purposefully multidisciplinary task force of elected officials and then county leaders from every aspect of county government, even those that we weren't sure would be affected, because you don't know what you don't know. And so again, trying to be proactive and lead the way, we pulled this group together and started to shape what are all the issues that we might need to think about should the state move forward with recreational adult use cannabis. And as a result, we created a really good policy paper and toolkit, again, about a year and a half before this actually became an active issue at our Capitol. It was also informed by things like, at the time, Ramsey County Commissioner Jim McDonough was the chair of LUC, NACO's large urban county caucus. And they had a convening out in Washington state for large urban counties that he asked me to attend with him to learn what this looked like in Washington state. And then we brought people from Washington and Colorado and other places to Minnesota to talk to commissioners at our policy conference about what should be on your mind beyond what is perhaps more of a knee-jerk reaction. I like this or I don't like this, but what does it really mean for our work? So that's an issue that's somewhat recent, but I'm really proud of, where I think we were able to do a lot of hard work before we ever had to go to the Capitol. We worked really hard to be an active participant in those conversations at the Capitol by staying as an association in a neutral lane, which is a way that we could affect policy, even though we knew we had counties who strongly supported legalization and others who did not. But we knew it was important for us to be able to address county perspectives. So that's an example of how I see us leading the way. And there are many more, but since this is only the third slide and I've already been talking a lot, I'll keep moving. Meeting members' needs is an important component of what we do to be a reliable source of information, but also adapting based on what's happening around us. And I'll just tell you my personal favorite example in this space was the work we did to launch our Bridging Divides initiative in 2018, when we saw the heightened partisanship that was starting to play out in Minnesota in county elections in a way that we hadn't seen before, in county boardrooms, in public hearings in a way we hadn't seen before. And the Bridging Divides initiative, multifaceted, but was really focused on trying to create forums where our members could talk to people that they didn't agree with and learn more about issues. And then also skill building so that our members would have the tools to be able to do that comfortably and effectively in their communities. And, obviously I know this is a personal favorite of Commissioner McGuire. She took some of this to NACO with her in her NACO presidency. But I just want to say, we started this in 2018. Obviously we didn't solve it, but I think our members are better prepared to have hard conversations and have created tools that work in their individual counties to be able to ensure that they can have hearty, productive conversations in their communities. And then finally, the value that maybe is sort of the tagline, headline that you see the most is stronger together. And our goal really within our mission to be a unifier and statewide voice for Minnesota counties, and really think about those areas where we can advance initiatives, policy, whatever the thing may be, on behalf of counties where we do have agreement. But I also want to note that this was very purposely written to note that we demonstrate respect for all perspectives, that we're stronger together when we can hear a variety of perspectives and try to create spaces where we can do that in our boardroom and in various settings so that we can be stronger together because we understand each other better. And that's not always easy. And some of you have engaged in those conversations very recently with us in our boardroom and at some of our conferences. And you know what? Sometimes they're messy, sometimes they're hard. Hopefully, by having some of the Bridging Divides tools, we can do them most effectively. But it's in order to really understand each other and work together, we have to be prepared to not always agree and figure out where we agree and disagree. But where this has worked out for us is in a lot of policy issues that I don't think any one county could have advanced on their own. And there's some that I'm not going to steal Matt's thunder. He gets to talk about what just happened, but I think that the example of avoiding some of the Health and Human Services cost shifts last session is a very recent example of a time where we brought together all kinds of counties to be able to share what this looked like in their community, what it meant for their property taxpayers, what it meant for their residents and people accessing services, and make a change at the legislature that I don't think a lot of people expected. And I have 6 bullets that we can talk more about.
Real quick, Commissioner Jemison.
Yeah, I'm so, I love that we're talking about some of these values and what it means to actually live them and apply them and how that can be difficult, right?
Yeah.
I will just say, as somebody who I'm in my 50s, there's been a lot of spaces over the time where you're kind of figuring out gender balance and power differentials. I've been through that generational shift and still ongoing. And I will say that coming into the new commissioner's orientation last year, even though those were all new commissioners, by the end of the day, that ballroom where the women all fit in around one table and kind of found each other for need of want of safety and security of being together, not safety and security as far as physical safety and security, but the idea of we're doing this new big bold thing. And I'm gonna need my sisters around me because wow, we're not the majority of people in this room. Ramsey County, we are one of the most diverse counties and our board honorably represents that. And I think that in other ways, there has been times of not feeling as if as a membership entity, that there's a readiness for a truly inclusive leadership. And I'm not sure, like, how can we as AMC, as members and as leaders, make sure to be asserting and leading and bringing people forward to that, even if they have not been challenged to do that in their own home states or home counties. And I'm just curious, like, how that work can be advanced, because there's work there.
Lots of work. Yeah, absolutely. I acknowledge that and recognize that I'm sitting in the most diverse county boardroom in the state. And
Isn't it beautiful?
it is, I will say, I think many of you know, I think many of you know that this is the county I live in. So I appreciate the county that I live in, and I also recognize the organization I work for and serve does not look like this boardroom. That the majority of county commissioners across the state are pretty homogeneous in terms of age, gender, and race. And I would say that there's a variety of ways, like, to talk about how we can continue to lean into helping people see things from different points of view, which is a mutual thing. I would say that there's different points of view that they bring to the table, even though when you walk into a room, there's a lot of similarity in what we see. And I would also say that most of them are seeing changes in their home communities and are faced with that and are working to address that in the way that fits in their home community. And when they come to statewide things, I would say for any individual commissioner who comes to our statewide things, they have their own unique perspective that they bring and their own comfort and discomfort. And I see and feel that a lot when, we host most of our events here in the metro. And a lot of our commissioners aren't even comfortable. I don't want to overemphasize this. I will say, when I grew up in a rural area, when I first came to the metro, even driving to the place where we hold our events was uncomfortable. And so we take a lot of people out of their comfort zone in a way that may not be immediately evident by the nature of the room once we all get in it. But I would look to you to continue to stay engaged. And I have a whole page on that too, of places where you are engaged, where you can help bring your specific perspective into the conversation. That will change the conversation because your perspectives are different.
I'm raising my hand. Yes.
I know the feeling. Yes,
Yes, Commissioner McWhorter. No, I appreciate that. And I also want to just, highlight the importance, especially with us being the most diverse board, that it's not beholden on us to do all the teaching. And the educating of folks. And I guess I want to get a better sense of, it will AMC start taking additional steps of, ensuring that more broadly the membership is, talk more about the diversity of thought and the different lived experiences that we know so many commissioners bring to this role, especially even though we make up a small group, it won't always be that way. And I think that we're going to see a lot more, people who look like us being elected in these positions throughout the state. So as we look at the leading the way, I was wondering if that is an area for AMC to start looking towards the future as we, hopefully see a lot more diversity in these county roles of better training and teaching other commissioners about how to engage and be in these uncomfortable settings for them.
Can I add quickly
Yeah.
before you respond to that? I just, I know how I feel and how I felt at numerous different occasions, no matter, we've talked about this, numerous times, but I also want to recognize we have a lot of staff. We are a diverse board, but we're also a very diverse in our staffing down to even our leadership as our county manager. And, you know, I recognize that some counties aren't even there yet. So I want to recognize that we as commissioners may feel that, but I also want to give space to our staff and what they're also feeling working on these committees and working as a part of this process as well, that we make sure that we have it top down all the way down, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, that it's not incumbent upon you to each be a teacher in the association by any means. And I think what I'm leaning into more is, and will, as I talk a little bit more, is just the relationship building as individuals with other individuals versus I think what you're talking about now around how are we thinking about maybe both programming and structuring of the association in a way to make it most inviting to all.
Yeah.
And all I will also say is that is something that I hear from everyone.
Mhm.
And I have appreciated each of you that have had conversations with me specifically about your specific point of view. And I would just say that I also have this conversation with new commissioners from across the state who are trying to figure out how they fit too. And so there's two pieces to this. And I hear you asking about leading the way in terms of our population is changing and how do we ensure that our association is thinking about that in the work that we do. And I think that's an excellent thing for a couple of the tables I'm going to talk about that some of you sit at for us to lean into and for us to think about the role we have in working as individuals with each other as well.
We'll
Thank you.
go to Lane and then we'll come to you.
One practical way, Julie, I was thinking, you know, I did get to go to a couple NACO board meetings just sitting on the side when I was a workforce director even, and I noticed when the board would talk about topics, a lot of them would, obviously like child protection, for example, or probation affects all counties, but I wonder if it couldn't help to get more presentations of like the like from populations that are more disproportionately impacted so that there's just, that is just brought into the room, because when they talk about those things, I felt a little like, you know, how does that feel for them when like, you know, the impact in some of those counties was, you know, maybe just a handful of people, whereas like in our county, it's so many people and it's people that don't really look like the people in their community. So how do we just get those voices in the room? And I wonder if it's on some of those board issues, if there's more some lived experience. I'm not saying those people have to be in the room, but like we certainly have lots of data or research, like how do we get that part of it, like the stories, you know, we have our American Indian administrator here, like those things just don't show up on a slide sometimes. And how do we make sure that those value, you know, those experiences get brought in while you're having those conversations? That's all, you know, I thought that was a practical way that could happen.
Thank
As
you.
we talk about topics. So.
Yep,
We'll
thank
go
you.
Matt, I'm gonna jump in and then Mary Jo.
That's helpful, and dovetailing off what Ling was mentioning, I've been thinking about how we've tried to be strategic and thoughtful and, you know, pushing our members through curation of our events at our annual conference and even some of our just fall conference, policy conference, et cetera, to talk about topics that I think some associations would just steer clear of altogether, whether it be immigration or immigration driving economies through the demographer and state economists, or trying to be very thoughtful about who our speakers are representing and having more diversity in our speaker profiles. That is something that we've been trying to be better at in the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years. I do think a lot of the opportunity for growth as a membership, as I've seen it in the last 13 years, comes through sometimes not the formal annual conference. So the big ticket events, it really seems to be at some of our smaller, whether it's subcommittee work, whether it's around housing or tribal affairs, or some of our subcommittees that we create literally on one specific issue. And in those instances, we try as best as we can to always be thinking of, okay, how's Ramsey represented in this moment? But I think we can be more thoughtful about not just how Ramsey is representing, but the stories of Ramsey and the personhood of Ramsey and the communities you represent as well.
Mary Jo, and then we'll
Yeah,
jump back in.
we'll come back in and I'm interested, obviously hear the rest of the presentation. As you all know, I have extensive experience at this and have been fortunate to have that. And when I came into leadership at AMC and at NACO, my question for Julie, for Matt Chase at NACO was, what is most needed at this time? And I think we all recognize this division. And it's as much about how we look, but how people think. And the diversity of thought is very strong at AMC and at NACO, and it was just seen at the time, and this was a few years ago now, that just holding the organizations together. So it's the conversations we have, like, how do people see themselves in these associations? Because people say, well, I know rural commissioners that do not see themselves. They think AMC is way too liberal. We're like, what? And so we know, and we are the most diverse. I'd say we're probably one of the most diverse county boards in the country. And so we totally see those differences in ourselves, and other people see differences in thought and where we're headed with things. And what I'm glad we're having the conversation about is, how do we manage that? And how do we have conversations like you mentioned cannabis, we mentioned opioid solutions. These are things that we actually, maybe like cannabis, we actually didn't take a position on, but we said, but counties need to be involved somehow in this solution. So that's how I see us sort of navigating some of these differences is, okay, we may not all come together on exactly what we're gonna do, but the fact that we're all at the table, or that we need to be at the table, is the important thing. And opioid, I hope you talk about this, Julie. Julie, was instrumental in the state in getting us a strong settlement, in that we learned from all over the country. She brought in people, and then she was, I think most people would argue she was the one in the room that actually made that settlement as strong as it was for all of us counties. So I think those are the things that we appreciate, and knowing that we look different than any other county in the state, and other counties think differently. I think even on their own boards, they're very different in their thoughts, and I think holding it all together is a challenge that we can all discuss. And it's not just up to us to decide, but we can be helpful in how we can help navigate all of that. So
Is it a follow-up to?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I just to put just to kind of put a button on this before we move on. Having grown up in a very, very small town, in a rural town, I understand the rural, suburban, urban divide as far as issues and the dynamics and all of those things, the political spectrum of thought. Even within a particular red shirt versus blue shirt, the diversity within those camps are more broad.
Yeah.
I just want to separate. For me, the discussion isn't to create it is to, while we're creating a space for these diverse points of view, that a point of view that we can hold a value on honoring each person's personhood and legitimate right to be there, not as something we can agree to disagree on, but as one of human rights and respect. And I think that part of my concern goes into that level, which is different than holding a coalition of different strategies and tactics and thoughts. And I think that there's some work that we should be doing as a member association at that least.
It's a really excellent articulation of it. Thank you.
On this point, Sprint, Julie and Matt, I think it's not so much that we AMC convenes and talks about opiates. Those are easy topics. I think we need to start thinking internally, we AMC, about the issues that never come to the table. So I hear a lot of examples. I've been here a long time. I could give you just as long of a list of issues that never came to the table to be discussed. Whether it's supported or not is irrelevant, but they were never discussed. So I think that's a focus that AMC has to do moving forward. If they want to stay to be a strong association, otherwise there's less return in investment, but for counties long term as they get more diverse.
We'll turn back to you all and then we'll jump back one.
Well, this has been like a rich start to a conversation, so it actually feels weird to kind of pivot back to the slides. And so maybe I will address them a little differently than I was planning, because I think there's more conversation to be had in this lane perhaps than I came prepared to. So I was gonna next talk about what we do just broadly, and what I will note a couple things here that I want to lean into. So I think we are best known for our government relations work, and we should be. It's half of our organization. It's more than half of our budget. There are other things that we do that various counties engage in more and less. We've talked a bit here today about education and training and some new ways of thinking about education and training, which is more than our conferences and formal trainings, and how it's really how we disperse information to help people do their jobs. When I say better, I mean in the way they want to do them to be most effective. And it's an important component that also is a revenue generator for the association that helps to support other parts of the association, like research, where we can dig into topics for counties. Grant services where we create tools, etc. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about affiliate services and define that more later. But that is where we essentially hold up and host all of the various staff level associations that support our ability to do our work. So I'll leave it at that unless you want to talk more in detail about any of those components now, or we can come back to it later. So how we do our work, I do think matters. And I want to talk a little bit about our structure, because I think each of you engage in it a little differently and in different ways. But Commissioner McMurtry mentioned our board of directors. AMC is a 501c4 organization governed by a board that includes all of the folks listed on this slide. It's a 33-member voting board. All of the voting members are commissioners, and each of those affiliate groups has an ex officio rep. One of the things that I think was done elegantly when the association was created was the balancing of the district director representation on the board. So you'll see 16 directors from 10 districts. We have 10 districts in the state, 9 non-metro. Each of those elects a district director to the board from within that geography. And then in the metro, each of the counties appoints someone to be a district director on the board, resulting in that 9 and 7 balance, which I think, given at the time that was created, was really thoughtful in trying to achieve a table where you have a good balance of perspectives, at least based on size of county. Then we have all of these other folks who serve on the board, including our officers, which you have the slide of our current officers that are elected at the membership meeting each year. This is our current slate of officers. Our NACO reps, of which Commissioner McGuire is one and will always be one as long as she's a county commissioner. She will serve on our board and the NACO board. Policy committee chairs are elected by the policy committee, and the 2 member services committee chairs are appointed by the president. So that's how we get into the mix of who's on this board as a voting member. But honestly, what I think is most important is the board actually has had a lot of change just in this last cycle. We've had a significant amount of turnover, but the board is the place where we bring the broadest array of perspectives to a table that is a size that can have discussion and decisions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our committee structure. I'll go ahead and even change slides. I think that's coming up next. But a lot of our committees are very large, and they serve as like education forums and a place to talk about issues. But the board has often been the place where the more in-depth conversations, maybe even about some of the harder issues, can happen. because of the size of the group and the geographic representation of the group. But we do have all of these other committee tables. Again, this structure was updated a few years ago with some new committees that have been added, and each of them have their own operating. And in fact, I am going to just start jumping around to make this like fit best for how we're talking about it. But on that standing committee chart, I wanted to highlight that all the places that Ramsey County has been involved and led. And I think each of you knows this as board members, but for folks who don't sit on all of those committees, to see the places where you have been engaged and continue to show up and bring Ramsey County's point of view into the conversation really matters.
Real quick question here. Commissioner Jung is not here with us today, but did send me some questions that she wanted me to ask. And I think this first one fits in very well with this topic. And so her question was essentially around AMC governance and resolution process, and how resolutions move through committees, how approvals happen, and what voting procedures look like. And one thing that she raised a concern around is how voting is balanced within policy committees, particularly when commissioners representing, counties of our size are effectively carry the same voting weight as commissioners representing much smaller populations. So her question is essentially, how does AMC evaluate voting structures and policy committees when representation and constituent impact vary so significantly between the counties?
Yep. And I will do my best to address this, and I might, if it's okay, can I come back to it after talking about two more things and then dive into that? Because Commissioner Zhang and I have had the chance to very briefly talk about this. And so what I will go back then to the fact that each of these is a little different. And I know Commissioner Zhang is particularly interested in the policy committee process, how we develop our policy platform, policy statements, and how that turns into legislative action. And so I will take a minute to talk about how we have how that's been structured, how it was structured, and how it works today. So we have operating procedures for the policy committees that were created and adopted by the board of directors, and were most recently updated in 2013. So just before I was at AMC as a staff, but not in this job. And it was quite I don't know, Commissioner Ortega, you might have been the only one who was on the board at that time. And I don't know if you remember this.
Yes.
But I know it was very controversial. And what's interesting about it is, like so many things that are controversial at AMC, is that everybody was, well, I mean, understandably, everybody was concerned about what it meant for them, but everyone had different points of view about what they thought it meant for them. So our policy committees prior to 2013 each had about 30 or 40 members, and they were appointed by the district directors. Each district director got to make a couple of appointments, and the committees were much smaller. And the board had a conversation, well, I don't think it was just the board. The organization had a large conversation about how to ensure that as an 87 county organization, all members felt like they got to participate in those conversations and the policymaking process. And that's what changed to the structure today, which is that every county gets to appoint a member to each policy committee. And the county boards that have 7 members have 7 appointments. So they get 2 extra appointments to place within the committees. And what I was interested, I dug into this a little bit in preparation for today. What I was interested to learn was that the rural counties were very concerned about that at the time, about the fact that the metro counties would have more members on these committees now. And of course, the metro counties were concerned about the same thing. The board made the decision to go this route. It was rolled out, and that's the structure that we have now today about voting membership for each of the committees. So,
Can you repeat that?
so each policy committee Every county gets to appoint one person to every policy committee. The handful of counties that have 7 members, like Ramsey, get to appoint one to each, and then you have 2 more that you can appoint, because you get the number of commissioners. So you have 2 more that you can appoint somewhere.
We have 7 commissioners and there's 5 other than policy, so.
On the policy
Just on the
committees, yeah,
policy, yeah.
on the 5 policies. So to go back to this, you have a couple committees where you've appointed 2 people, and most counties don't do that. Well, can't do that. So that's the voting process, but I actually think the place I would go with that is, the voting process in my mind is the last. It's not even the last step. It's a midpoint step, but maybe not the most important step in the development of AMC policy. And so what do I mean by that? Policy is mostly developed through a variety of other ways: coalition building, talking to each other about what the emerging issues are. We do a variety of meetings in preparation for when we put together our platform, where we try to engage and actually try to most often come to positions that the whole policy committee can support. Doesn't happen every time. Didn't happen a couple times this year, which I think goes to raising the question. But it's been our goal to say the policy positions AMC works on should not be the issues where we have like a 51%, 49% agreement. 51% like this, we're going to go forward. But rather it should be the things that have broad agreement across all counties of all types. And so we try to view those things through that lens. Our policy platform document is very long. It's like 40 pages long now. And it has a lot of statements in it about things that we support, don't support. And it gets distilled down each year. And this is where I think the important point is. It gets distilled down into the things AMC is going to work on and the priorities we're going to lean into by the board. And the board selects our priorities every year with an eye to what matters to all counties. How does this impact all counties? Or what's of such importance to some counties that it matters to all counties? And try not to steal his thunder, but that goes to like the board taking a position on HCMC at the first meeting of the year. But as we go into this year's session, if you look at the things that are priorities, they're intended to be things that have significant impact for all. And we try to lean into that lane. And the things that maybe the policy committee voted on, but we can tell there's still issue with, we manage differently through our board process or subcommittee processes to keep refining, because we don't, stronger together only works if we're stronger together. And if we go to the Capitol and we know we're not, it doesn't work. And we have a number of examples of that Matt's going to talk about. So I'm talking a little bit philosophically about it. We have a timeline and a process. You have to submit resolutions by this date. They get vetted by this date. And I absolutely have a flow chart that I can share with you about that. But I actually think it comes down more to this. And that is, where do we set up committees where we really, like the cannabis committee or others, where we really flesh things out and figure out how to move forward on issues together. And now I am really all over the map. And so I am going to talk a little bit more. I'll come back to that in just a minute about this session, that right before I hand it off to Matt. Our success. So I did tell you I wanted to talk a little bit about how we've assisted you and hopefully help to advance your goals. There were 2 handouts that you were sent ahead of time, and I do have paper copies over on the table. This slide pulls out a handful of items where I think through statewide engagement, we have been able to make significant strides. And this is a dollars and cents slide. It's not everything else, but where we've had success that has, I think, mattered to Ramsey County in terms of advancing your ability to do your work for your communities.
My turn?
Yep.
So since we're on a dollars and cents side, do you know offhand how much Ramsey County pays in for our dues and our fees to participate in AMC? So we can also have that number.
Ooh, I have a stack of paper. I can tell you that dues make up 50% of our budget, and Ramsey County pays of the total dues amount, you pay 4%. And Ling is saying 98 while I try to page through.
98,000.
I do have it. Oh, it's on the piece of paper that's over here.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't see that and
Nope,
grab one of
that's
those.
okay.
See how close that is.
You're right on the money,
I
Lang.
don't, I don't.
Wow.
You are, if you are, I feel like you got your real eye on our budgets.
You know, I wrote this down on a piece of paper that I did not put in front of me.
It's not here.
Oh, 2025, it was 83,000.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was last year.
Not bad.
I do have the actual number for this year
Okay.
because where the finance committee meets next week. So I was just
Oh.
looking at it.
Should I follow?
No, just curious.
So 83,000 of the total dues amount, that's about 4%.
Okay.
Do everyone pay 4%?
No.
There's a formula.
Okay, based on,
It is there's a lot in it, but it includes population, assessed land value. There's 2 assessments. Oh, look at you,
88.
88 this year.
2026.
It's got a number of like tax capacity measures baked into it, like taxable land value. So they play out differently for others. Population, and inflationary increases that go into it. The board, finance committee and board worked for the last 2 years to change the formula to be more predictable over time. And so there was a base number set based on past amounts paid, so I'm stumbling a little bit over all these past factors are now baked into a base amount. And now the formula is essentially this base amount. And then the amount that is still formula based is based on your CPA allocation, which also has a lot of things baked into
Could you
it.
send that to us? Yeah, this is easier to do.
So I think this is a great transition into Commissioner Zhang's second question, which is on CPA. Because I appreciate you outlining
Yeah.
the ROI for the county, because I think, we've had other organizations that we have been a part of that have struggled to share the return on investment that we are putting into being members of those groups. And so I appreciate this. But looking at the CPA, and this is Commissioner Zhang's wondering around the path on CPA. She mentioned that the last update was that there was both a committee and a task force working on the issue. And she stated that we also received feedback from House Tax Committee members suggesting AMC should come back with a proposal. So her question is how AMC has planned to make a more active role in reconvening the task force, helping develop consensus recommendations, and bringing forward a coordinated proposal back to the legislature.
Before I turn it to Matt, I will say that the CPA formula that exists today was created 8 to 10 years ago, the last time.
16.
10 years ago, with a very large work group of AMC. Matt was brand newish, and so I helped to staff that. We had extensive representation of members, and I am extremely proud of the work that we did that resulted in, at that time, unanimous support for the change in formula. I know Ramsey County has questions about the formula now. But I highlight that because, like many of our task forces, we spent a year trying to get it right with a lot of folks with different concerns around the table. And we did. For that moment in time, did a good job of a formula that folks could support, that were trade-offs for lots of folks. I know questions have been raised about, okay, it's been 10 years. So what's next? And that's where I'll turn it over.
At that time, Ramsey was very well represented with both commissioner on that committee, which was smaller, as well as at the time, Nick and Claudia Brewington, who sat on there from your staff, your GR department. I think the CPA story is twofold. There's the formula, which has garnered more conversation of late. But there's also the equity and parity between cities and counties. And I just do want to take one moment to all count, not just AMCs. This was not an equal relationship. In fact, there were some years that cities would get more than twice what counties get. And if you still look at the CPA and LGA formula right now, cities are $700+ million a year in an appropriation, and we're a little more than half of that. But still, I would argue from the things that we do, the mandates, the impacts on federal legislation, we're not getting our share.
For sure.
And so I think one of the testaments of the last 8 to 10 years has been a total flip. In terms of counties really making a push to be equals, and that happening in recent years. And so you actually saw counties sometimes getting, in one year we got double what cities got. And then from the two most recent increases that are referenced on this in 2020 and 2023, we kept the 1-for-1. And I will say that is a feat. One, there's just simply more city council members, cities. There's 800 cities in the state. There's council members. They have 3 times the amount of city organizations that we have and lobbyists. And the fact that we can go toe to toe and keep ourselves as equal, at least for me. I like the underdogs, but like we are an underdog in the tax pond, and we fight hard and we keep our elbows out and we get our share. The formula, pivoting to the formula, is one that, in all sincerity, we're struggling to find a lane on. Last year, we held a significant day-long meeting, an AMC board meeting, where we actually hired outside counsel as well to help us do actual runs on what formulas could look like. Commissioner Zhang, I'm very grateful for her participation, as well as your own staff, in kind of creating, sharing space for the Ramsey County story. In fact, we asked Ramsey County to be present during that meeting because we wanted your voice to be heard in terms of what your concerns about the formula was. It is tough because that formula is one of many formulas that counties get. It is the largest formula of general purpose aid. But it is one that I'm struggling to find a lane of where agreement can align up. What the small lanes that we're looking into more is a tax capacity issue of trying to find a way to more adequately represent 2 things in the formula: true social services cost spending, which, and I know this is recorded, but I'll give Ramsey County kind of a strategy play for you guys too, which is there are other counties in rural Minnesota through relationship building that share that story with you as well. Limited tax base and high per capita social services spending. So we're thinking about, is there a way that our formula could represent that a little bit more? And the second thing is tax base exemption. I know you've had your staff look into this in a way. I know you ran your own bill as well. That is kind of like, hey, we have a unique story when it comes to federal and state infrastructure here that don't pay their fair share. And once again, there are counties across the state that also have that story. The nuances of how we get there is, one, finding an actual policy of how we rework this formula. And I agree, just because it was great 10 years ago and Ramsey was tooting its horn and it was fantastic, doesn't mean it's great for Ramsey today. So that doesn't mean that we can't or should not look at it. But the strength of how we got dollars over cities has been 87 counties get up and support it. And I do think that is a really critical factor, because what happens when the cities get up to testify is there is haves and have-nots in terms of some cities that don't even get LGA and some that do. And then that breaks down over the committee structure. And in the meantime, counties get to kind of swift through and go, well, we're united, and here you go. So yes, more to come. And I'm happy to talk with Commissioner Zhang and more members of the board or staff and continue to keep that space open. The thing that I want to think about next year in is twofold. I want to think about who we might have on tax committees. The deficit situation concerns me, and I want to think about what stories sell. And this is something that you all do as a county board. You're elected commissioners. You know, storytelling is a key component of how you talk with your community and how you uplift their stories and get successful legislation in. CPA might not be that vehicle to do it. Does that mean that we shouldn't still look at formula factors? No, we can still do that. But what I start thinking about is, where did we get a lot of broad consensus this year? HR 1, federal impacts, and I do think, we'll talk about this a little later, the success of MAFA, CWDA, and how this legislature at least walked away putting a pin of, we're not getting you all that you need, but we want to come back and do that. Is that a story where, especially in a formula, I've taken a look at it, where it's based on caseloads, there isn't a strong base like CPA does. Ramsey does very well in that compared to other counties and the current child welfare allocation grant. So is that the space that we should be looking at? If we have legislators who are sympathetic to that cause, should we be putting our emphasis in those? At the end of the day, it gets back to what is CPA for? It's aid for you guys to reduce your property tax dollars, your levy, and to support your staff. We can do that in various different ways. So a very long way, but it is something that I think about quite often and am constantly searching for lanes. And I tried to show you a little bit of a blueprint of what we're thinking about on that.
Yep.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to that, I think not for today, because it sounds like it would be quite dense, but going into, as every county during these challenging times has to be very precise and disciplined within our budget reflections. The idea of being able to understand every lever that we can pull in doing that coalition building. So to your point, if there are some 20, 30, or however many of these potential things, what has the most impact, who's most affected, how do we agree to stay the course over here with the agreement that you're gonna back us on this?
Yep.
Right? I think that being able to maybe lay that out for us would be really helpful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is very helpful.
Commissioner Warren, and then.
Yeah,
Town
I
Manager.
just want to pause and just, for those of you that, maybe haven't been following CPA as long as some of us have, this is a huge deal. Like, it just seems like it's never enough for us, because it isn't. I mean, I definitely agree that this formula isn't great for us, but the fact that we actually got as much as cities are going, well, when I found out how little we were, how much less we were getting than cities for all the work that we do, I mean, it's just astounding. So to even get the same, I mean, we should be getting way more than cities get. And the fact that it was so hard to get this, I mean, I'm gonna give Matt and Nancy tons of credit for this. We could not get, we have a majority of legislators in our county here that we try to impact, and we can hardly get them to put more money into this formula. So the fact that we are equal anyway is good, but we all know how hard it is even to influence our own delegation. Like, we have a lot of members of our own delegation, and just getting them to put more money into CPA is really hard. So I'm gonna just thank for that. And I agree with everything that we've been saying, that we need to look at these formulas. We need to find those areas of this. And just to the reality, of course, that we're still reeling from this last legislative session where we didn't get everything we wanted. We're all reeling from that. And just to recognize that there is a lot of work to be done, and it is relationship building with our own legislators, but to give Matt and AMC a lot of credit, because I'm gonna say that it's really those relationships that they built that got us to even where we are today, but that's a big deal. And it may not seem like it, but it is, so.
Town Manager Becker, then Moran, then Miller.
Yeah, and this will be quick, and then we can take it maybe with the Metro administrators, but I really appreciated hearing that CPA is just one of the mix of the pie of trying to reduce our property tax pressure. I think it would help us if AMC could, now that we're looking at our budgets more than, 1 year or 2 years at a time, we're looking at a long game, and I liked what you were referencing with the MAFA, act about the putting a pin in it. I mean, to me, this is like ongoing work over multiple years, and we should build an AMC strategy that's like more than just one legislative session at a time. So you gotta see the whole pie, what are all the pieces that counties get? And then I'll just refer you back to what you said about HCMC. At some point, there is something that's compelling, that is really painful for some counties, that all counties can get behind. And while maybe CPA isn't it, we are impacted, for example, by, really disproportionately around some of these state operated services or something, like maybe there's another thing.
Yeah.
And as long as we get to the end, I guess I care less about the means. I don't actually want to waste a ton of time on CPA if it's actually not gonna bear much fruit, but I think we need to see the whole pie to know where we can explain and show the confounding factors of strategy. Because I think all the Metro directors, like we were saying, and we'd love to build top of this, District 10 at some point. So when it's like our turn to run District 10, I'm gonna be trying to influence our commissioners that will be running that. But to me, it's like, we have
Right.
these mandated things that none of us actually want to be a part of. I think that room needs to be the room where at the metro counties, we're like, hey, this is a pie that's bad for everybody. We want to fix this pie together, you know? And there were a few things that people brought up in those, whether it was adult childcare licensing for child or for care. Adult care. Every county is paying 5 times the amount than the state's giving us to do.
Yep.
We should get a strategy around, that would take me not focus on CPA so much and go, okay, let's put our energy into that, because it's basically a different color money.
Right.
But it's gonna still save our property tax. We gotta get really strategic about what we're trying to do, and I really think this is a moment where, you know, just so the board knows, I meet monthly with the metro administrators, we all show up, and I think we really are trying to find commonality even with the ring counties to say, okay, we all have, you know, what are the 3 things we can bring to our commissioners and say, it doesn't work in Ramsey, Washington, and no, it doesn't work for any of us. And I want the commissioners to galvanize around those things, you know, so so that piece of the pie feels relevant for everybody, or some of those ideas, you know, so.
I would like to just ditto that, you know, how can we come together on something collectively? You know, we will fight for CPA because we want to. This is not
right.
fair and equitable and right
Right.
for Ramsey County. But where can we come together? That's going to give us some relief.
Yeah.
Just as we did this last session
Yeah.
on a few things. And other pieces, as you talked about the high per capita social services that are impacting some counties, that is same and similar in urban and rural.
Yeah.
I think part of the work that I would like to see from ANC for you to show us that and give us that information so that we can build the allies, so we can have those conversations around common issues and concerns.
That's a good point.
So that'd be great.
I'm okay. I think Blaine kind of hit on what I was gonna mention.
Time check, we have
Yep.
25 minutes.
I'm gonna finish with a couple words and turn it to Matt to talk about this session, because you guys are right on with how we are thinking about, you know, we have lots of ways of engaging, but what I want to talk about as I tee up talking about this session was, you know, we had our process of developing a platform, and the board developed our priorities, and then we had to figure out how to activate and stay nimble around those priorities. And so we put together a number of work groups, and we engaged through the county manager's office and the board chair on ensuring that Ramsey County was represented in each of those places. These are the groups that we ran throughout the session on our highest priority issues. And you'll see that in just about every case, we have not only 1, but 2 Ramsey County reps, because we were trying to ensure an elected official perspective and then staff expertise. And part of why I put this up here is to thank you for the time that you and your staff put into helping us to get our arms around what would make the most sense. We are at our best when we have active engagement. And I will tell you, these groups were active. And some of them have been going on longer than session, like the MAFA CWDA group, which is a statewide group that Commissioner Moran serves on. And still going.
Congratulations.
It's also county attorney perspective. And then there are things that are not on here, but like the DCT work group that Commissioner Jevon Singh serves on, that I know you talked about, I think at maybe your last work session, where we're doing deep dives into other pieces of policy that have dramatic impact on your residents and your costs. And then I want to give a shout out that, because I talk to you guys a lot, and I give you and you deserve many kudos, but I want to give some kudos to County Manager Becker for her leadership within the Metro Directors Group in pushing forward the transforming HHS systems, not only the systems modernization, but the roles. And she talked a little bit about this. The work that we do and that balance between state and local work has been really something that that Ling has driven and has been in my ear and the ear of others on, we've got to really think about how we deliver the things that matter most, where we need to be high touch, and what things the state should be more responsible for, and has been a huge part of our work. And I would say that I hope you can see that ANC worked hard to keep that issue alive throughout this session, as we talked about different proposals that were on and off the table, and as Matt talks about what we succeeded at. And then the last item I put up there, just because I also wanted to highlight the things that come up where we just need expertise to help us understand, hey, this thing came up that we need to get our arms around what it means, and coming to your team to be able to get perspective on what this would mean in your county and to be able to tell that story. So with that and all these folks who are involved, I will turn it to Matt to talk about
I think it's
where we are.
a note of gratitude for certain for you all, because you have busy times, your staff, but also this is the blueprint for every single roadmap of our strategy for our legislative priorities. This is it. It's not policy committee. We meet for a total of 2 hours for all of fall, to take folks on. This is where the work is done. This is the power, this chart right here. And Ramsey's name is next to a lot of it. And to County Manager Becker's point, I was there. I don't go to all the District 10 manager meetings, but I was invited to that one when I heard Commissioner Becker making her passionate plea of we need
Manager Becker.
Manager Becker, making her passionate plea of like, we cannot continue to do these systems the same way. And why does it matter to a constituent or person coming to service if it's 87 counties or one entity? That idea was nowhere. That was a conversation around county managers and administrators in the metro level 2 months before session, and with no legislators or no bill. Julie talked to the governor's office. The governor's office put it in their original package. Now, with some amendments that we had to walk through and kind of do, there was a tremendous amount of work more to temper our membership, who was extremely nervous about this, including your partner to the metro. And there was work behind the scenes for us to tell Republicans. The first Republican press conference of the governor's budget was on this item, and they said, basically, never. Why can we trust the agencies to actually do this successfully? This is a pipe dream, was the quote. It's in a bill.
Wow.
So that work was entering rooms, and Commissioner, former Representative Chair Moran knows this, outside committee rooms to talk to leaders in the GOP caucus to say, there is something sound. We should be doing this work. We should be studying this. We cannot absorb these costs in perpetuity. So just to show you just some of these issues that might seem small or bullet, I feel like, the hair rises on the back of my neck because it's a proud moment of that did start with Commissioner Becker, Commissioner County Manager Becker. But it ended, that path just was a long path to end where it was.
Wow. Congrats.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if this is where to slide it in, but I just kind of wanted to throw this in before I forgot. One of my reflections from this session, and maybe this is the first time because I'm part of an elected body and not a community member, but to the earlier point of it doesn't have to be CPA, but what is the net policy or financial implication of the conversations we can have collectively and individually to advocate for things? The idea that if the state is going to mandate things and not pay for them, and that it ends up on the burden of our property taxpayers, but they are willing to give property tax relief. It's a hard sell for us because it says counties can't manage their budget and we're gonna save you.
Yeah.
But if in the end, our property owners get that relief, how much do we eat it and just say, thank you, it got done? And I guess what's the tactic and what's the strategy? And I say that for counties, and I say that for Ramsey County, and I say that for metro counties, is just that sense of the temporal and the geographical implications of these things. It's not just a binary to Julie's earlier thing. It's not, what's my hot take? I like it or I don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think for knowing that as commissioners, the scope and the breadth of the work that we have, we can only know this much because then we're on to the next thing, feeling a long line of things. One of the things that I am hoping to get from our associations with AMC and government relations is that deeper dive into the idea of not this year, not yet, but only because we're teeing it up for next session. And, so that, and to bring the membership along in a more rich conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a
Well
great
said.
point. I was thinking the exact same thing. I know Matt and I have been back and forth on the automatic property
Yeah.
tax refund. Like,
Yeah.
you know, these things that we know may not have been a top priority for this year, but we wanted to at least tee up what's to come. And I think that's a great example of, you know, a potential opportunity, especially through, you know, Representative
Yeah.
Matt Norris and his work and
Yes.
finding some bipartisan support, starting this task force of an issue that we can tee up for next year. One quick final question from Commissioner Zhang, and then we'll get back into just the legislative recap. She had a question around HR1 and wants to get a better sense of AMC's commitment to more concentrated advocacy around HR1 and the downstream impacts on counties.
Yes, this is one that we will unfortunately have to continue doing.
Yeah.
There were no local government groups hosting sessions before in the interim. We worked with Leader Murphy, Aaron Murphy, Senator Lindsey Port, Senator Scott Dibble, and others to bring to assist in their pre-legislative work on bringing attention to HR1 through multiple hearings in October and September. Commissioner McMurtry, you were part of them and actually presented at one. Thank you. HR1 has been a fundamental part of our advocacy. If you're interested, I can collect some of the things that in just community papers, whether it be Pioneer Press, MinPost, NPR, interviews, radio interviews with NPR, trying to equate HR1 impact to property tax, negative property tax outcomes. And we'll talk a little bit about how that translated this year at the Capitol. It's not the best of stories. It's better than nothing, but it's not the best of stories. In the 12 hours, I should say 8 hours after legislative session ended 2 nights ago, Sunday night, Senator Klobuchar's staff and Representative Finstead's staff had already reached out to us asking where did this end up. NACO calls, we had 2 last week with NACO staff still trying to bring counties and parishes from the South and et cetera together who share this burden and trying to activate basically in the Senate Agricultural Committee, who will have the last basically ditch effort to put a pause on some of these HR1 impacts, at least for a year. So that is at the forefront of our work. It did not, I'll just tell right now, basically we did not get the long-term air rate or benefit cost share paid for. That does take effect not this year, but next year. What we were asking for as a last ditch effort was at least pay for the administrative cost share. That's roughly $33 billion a year and growing. That starts this October. And so County Manager Becker is very well aware of this and Ramsey's impact. But this is one that we were very clear. If you are not paying for this, this does not mean that we get to limit the work we do on SNAP. No, we're going to still do SNAP. Our community needs us. But it means that we will have to offset that shift. They provided close to $11 million in one-time money to go to counties, but that leaves $20 million that is not there. And this one did get caught up in a couple things. One, unfortunately, Human Services. I don't know if you've talked to Senator Hoffman. He was pacing the entire last 24 hours at the Capitol. It was tough to watch because he was visibly hurt by the target that they were given for that committee to actually cut. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And so they did do cuts to disability services as part of that negotiated agreement. The second thing was that I think we're caught in this dilemma. And I know this is being aired. I shouldn't probably say this, but for anyone watching it, it's easy to see, to me at least. You have the GOP caucus didn't want to talk about HR1. It started, they first in the fall said, don't call it big, beautiful bill. Then it was, don't talk about HR1. At the end, to get to talk about this, we were using federal legislation recently passed in summer when we were talking with members of the GOP caucus. The Democrat caucus loved to talk about HR1, but also knew that the strong selling point behind during election season, look, it's clear as day, HR1 passed, and this is the negative outcome. And so at a certain point, it felt, not just to question sincerity about wanting to help us, but it kind of felt like, hey, this is still a really strong messaging item for us. hey, the feds still have time to fix this. Hey, there's so many other things. And oh, by the way, my committee just got a $300 million target, negative target. This one we're not going to do. And so I'm sad about this. This one is another one that we want to talk about. Administrative cost shift. You know, when I was talking to Peter Cox at NPR yesterday morning, I was just trying to jazz it up so that he would be willing to cover it. You know, administrative cost shift isn't something that your constituents are going home to think about. So how do we continue that work? It'll be something that I certainly, this is TB to be continued on this.
And I want to say two things if I could, very quickly. One is, we were in touch with the federal delegation even over the weekend. That was sort of my job, was keeping them apprised of what was and wasn't happening, to say, this is not currently looking good, we're coming back. And so we're doing the next, now, like, we never stopped and we're not stopping, because now we're turning back to the US Senate to say, okay, you told us to try to fix it at the state level, the state legislature didn't take care of it, now we're back. And pushing both sides of the aisle, both bodies there. So that has never stopped. And this kind of goes back to Commissioner Jevons saying as well, a comment you made. You know, when we try to tell the story, the amount of media we've been doing since HR1 is to try to help folks understand the impact is statewide. What is, and you know, it's hard for each individual county to talk about what it means for property taxes, but we're trying to tell it with examples and in aggregate, that this is every corner of the state. And at the end of session, the two interviews I did the last day of session, where people wanted to talk about that property tax rebate. How do counties feel about this property tax relief? And Matt told me I had to be positive, but I said, this is good. This is good for property owners, and it is good that there will be one-time relief. But I'm very concerned that county boards are going to turn around and raise property taxes more because of the work that went undone. And so property owners are going to say, I'm supposed to be getting a rebate. Why are my property taxes going up? And so I, you know, leaned back into, we've been talking for a year about SNAP and Medicaid and the impact that's going to have on county budgets. And I'm very concerned that not everyone understands that while this is good, there is still very hard work that county boards are going to have to do. And there will be property owners that see property taxes go up.
Why can't counties get that money? Okay, comes
We talked about that.
We made a push last minute to try to do that, as well as to reduce the homestead property tax credit refund. You know, right, they spent $125 million on a one-time homestead credit refund. That'll go out roughly in August, right? On average, that'll net someone $200 cash for an average homestead. We asked, you know, hey, that's 14% increase, 14.83%, I believe, increase from what it is right now. It's only one time. Would you be willing to take basically $20 million, cover the rest of our SNAP cost shift just for this next year? You'd still have a 12% increase in your homestead credit. And then you don't have someone in August getting $200 cash, which they may or may not see because it's direct deposit. And then in September, seeing your preliminary levies come out, you know, and that it just, at the end of the day, it didn't work. It was. And I think that there were certain legislators who were like, but I get to run on, I just gave people $200 cash. So that was tough. And I get it. It is to your point earlier too, it is property tax relief. And maybe that's something that we frankly sweep under and say, we support this.
I don't, to that point, I've had my more conservative libertarian constituents when we did have our property tax relief options that went out that we really heavily promoted because of property taxes, affordability are really an issue, come back and say, but why are they asking me for all this income information? Why are they doing all of that? So what I mean by that is that it's not as clean as you think. It's not, I own this property to get my money back. There's still going to be some income limitations that the legislature has other policy goals in distributing those funds. Wow. So if you truly want us to manage our budgets and not have to put a burden on the property tax owners, just pay the people who are, pay your bills, right?
Yeah, right. I like that.
Just pay your bills.
Right. So I just want to do this really quick before we don't have it, just me to mention, CWDA. You know, this was a long year of talking about that, and really a lot of opposition to it. Delay it, it's not good, all that type of conversation. But we came out pretty good, getting a lot of what we asked for. And then no places do everyone get everything that they ask
Right.
for. It just doesn't happen. You know, but I know there's just some questions around, civil cases. What did I say? What do I know
The
that?
case review?
The case reviews.
Yes, yeah.
There's still conversation around the case
Yep.
reviews, where there's still pushback.
Yes.
You're saying, well, we didn't get money or enough money. You got money. So we shouldn't do a case review. Maybe county shouldn't do case reviews. And I would like to say we open up talking about the diversity of, not just about people, but thoughts and processes and who has been harmed. And Ramsey County is known for their inequities and their great disparities across the country, Free Blacks. And I know we can do better than that as a state and as counties. And so, you know, I think case reviews, you know, it helps counties look at and reflect on the type of work they're doing, the service that was right. It is an opportunity for us to check ourselves, right? Instead of giving it to the state. And so my hope is that we don't turn around now and push back as an AMC saying, we're not going to do case reviews. You need to do things to find out whether or not something is working or not. You know, you can't delay something and say it's not going to work because the fear is overwhelming. Right? But there are real families that has been hurt. There are real children that has been hurt. Family who's been displaced when a child is put out of their home. And they said we did some reasonable efforts to find a grandmother or something. And 4 months later, a grandmother show up and say, I'd like to have custody of my child. And then we have counties who are saying, oh, no, they've been really comfortable here. They have adjusted to this family. That's my child. That's my grandchild. That's my blood. That matters. And it has not been a priority. So, and those things are harmful, right? And so with lack of representation within AMC of the Black community, I'm bringing that perspective of all the people who showed up and testified and shared their stories and made a case for why we need to make active efforts and why that is important, why you engage families, right? And why you support children being with relatives versus being with strangers, that we do not take up the mantle and say, 87 states, we're not going to support it. And so I'm asking to be in those conversations, right? Because I think representation matters, but stories matter, you know? And I think it was you, Judy, who said, you don't know what you don't know. And I would say a lot of folks that don't look like me just don't know. Right. Or maybe they do and don't care, but I don't want to be on that side of the road saying that.
And I hear you, and we will keep you as an active part of that conversation.
I'm not gonna be in every conversation. I just can't be everywhere, you know, but I do want to be where we're making policy decisions. I do want to be in those spaces.
And I feel like there's still a balance that we want, where we are saying, hey, the state of Minnesota is the worst state as well, not only in disparities, but how they fund child welfare systems. We get the least, we should be indignant about that together. We get 41% of our costs.
Let me just say this, Matt. What I've learned is that over the pandemic, we have put in millions and billions of dollars into systems, and we don't have a different result. We're still homeless at the highest rates ever been in mental health. And so sometimes it's about changing practices and protocols and procedures. We have to look at doing what we do a different way, because the way that we're doing is not working, right? And so adding money to a system that's not working is not the answer. It is changing how we do it and what we do that is going to create a different process and change. I just want to say that because we've all watched all the dollars that we have invested, and we're still hurting.
And I know
5 minutes, so I just want to give you all a chance to wrap up in the next 2 or 3 minutes.
Well, I just want to acknowledge, and sort of this also goes back to the beginning, that like Commissioner Moran does keep showing up in those spaces, and how much I've appreciated that, because I know they're not easy spaces. And you're carrying a big mantle in those spaces, and we need your help to do
And
that.
I need your help.
And I hear you need our help. Yeah. Do you wanna
Yeah,
wrap up?
well, I think one of the things on the stuff, I hope that your staff gets good credit too for the work that is done in the technology modernization space. I know Jolie Wood is just fantastic. She was asked to do a really impossible job this year. And she was there all the time, constantly, and up until, you know, midnight of Sunday. And so I want to thank her for her partnership. The technology modernization the fact that $90 million was spent on technology modernization is a resounding success for all counties. And that is a testament to the work of everyone coming together on an issue and all 87 counties. That is huge to have Republicans carrying it with Democrats in both chambers, and 201 votes yes for $90 million. There was no red votes.
Unheard of.
So that is great. That is good work. Counties will be actively monitoring and at the advisory council doing that work with what programs are going to be funded. The other thing I wanted to mention with is FHPAP is something that your communities care about very greatly. And federal or the family homelessness and something program. Sorry. Yeah, but this is rental assistance. And this was really important. We heard a lot from Hennepin and Ramsey County and the Metro in particular about the impacts of Metro surge, and $40 million of FHP dollars coming out. I want you to know that Kate Dewan on my team worked really closely with Ramsey County. I believe it was Jamie Wilkins, to just say, hey, Chair Howard's texting us all the time. Representative Leach Kozlowski's texting us. They're making these decisions not in the committee room, but behind closed doors. Does this timeline work? Does these logistics work? So I think that's, again, when we look at return on investment, I'd ask too that you see us. Yes, there's the dollar amount that you're paying for services, but it's also, we should be supporting your team, and we are, and that collaboration matters, so that Ramsey's input of, hey, does this timeline work for us? We can do this. Yes. The other one that is probably not sung enough is the homelessness prevention aid program. That's something that AMC worked with Aisha Gomez, I think 3 years ago, to put in place, but it had a sunset on it for 2027 or 28. Ramsey County gets $2 million a year. To this point of where can we throw and create formulas that address real needs in communities? Homelessness is one of them. Not cheering for the fact that Ramsey has a disproportionate number, but let's get dollars and resources there that are really general purpose dollars. So to extend that timeline, which we did this year in a bipartisan chamber, we extended it another 4 years to 2032, gives you guys time. That's money for you. That's millions of dollars, and that's ability to plan, be thoughtful and planful during your budget dynamics. Appreciate Commissioner Moran's comments about NAFBA CWDA. We talked about the just needing to have HR1 work continue in this biennium. We unfortunately will also have to really be thoughtful of how we message the long-term services and supports cost waiver. Remember last year they were saying, hey, counties, if you don't, you're gonna have 5% of CADI waivers and disability waivers. Now all of a sudden, in the last minute, Hoffman Abler moved to like create a diversion for 2 years and said, if you find savings, then you won't get this. Well, guess what? Folks on your committee found savings, and they used it for the budget, their general revenue budget relief, not ours. And so we're gonna have to go right back to capital next year. This is a real thing. Your budget leaders, department heads will be obviously talking about this in the interim too. Juvenile delinquency, just putting a pin in this is another really tough issue up at the Capitol. And I know that we've just tried to make sure that we're collaborating, giving you all the information we know. Emilio Lamba works on this issue. He's been fantastic. He was throughout the last day was working with Senate and James Hager from Aaron Murphy's team, as well as talking with Representative Cedric Frazier. There is a lot of different opinions, even among Democrats, on this issue. It is tough. I just want you to know we're in there. It's not clean. It's very difficult. If there's interest from Ramsey County Board on more of an update on that, let us know. Let Emilio know. The last one I'll say is sometimes it's the things that don't happen that also are victories. And in this case, property taxes, there was a lot of corporations and companies coming to the Capitol this year asking for special property tax relief or changing the way we assess property taxes to give them a leg up through really nuanced things that we've one caught and said, wait a second, they're changing prima facie, or two, they're taking away our ability to use income data for income producing buildings. That could be a problem. And I want to just give credit to your team here at Ramsey. You have many great people. Pat Chapman is someone that I work with regularly on assessment issues. But this is one where, again, through Access with AMC, we were able to talk to Chair Greg Davids, the GOP member, late in the session multiple times and just say, hey, please, this is not the right thing to do. This will have this effects. It'll shift tax burden to residential properties. And in the end, we were able to stop that. So I'll stop there.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow, congrats.
Appreciate that. So that's I'll stop there, but I just appreciate your partnership and always happy to come back. I hear loud and clear too, it's also about seeing behind the curtains. It's not just being talked at, it's being part of the strategy discussions. So I am more than happy to continue coming back or talking to each of you individually. And never hesitate to reach out to me or anyone on our team on anything legislatively. Right.
So I get to pull rank
That's right.
over Matt and get one more word. And all it will be is this. When Ling told me we had 90 minutes, I said, we'll never fill it. Leave it to us. Appreciate the engagement and conversation. And I know that you came with a list of questions that weren't fully answered today. And I think there's room for continued conversation. A place where I think we should take that next. Some of these questions is our board, which, you know, we have two members of sitting here to dig into a little bit more and start to discuss a path. And I would also say you have the benefit of proximity. And so Matt's offer is real. Like, I love coffee. I'm happy to meet and chat with any of you anytime. We're also happy to come back and work with your staff. We didn't get to dive very much into how important those relationships are to forming our policy, to really being able to like look under the hood and see how things really work. We come to you because you're closest. And so I just want to end by saying thank you. I know that you have a lot of questions and I hope we can start to provide the right information so that you can make informed decisions, but we appreciate having the time with you. And I appreciate the amount of time you guys show up. So thank you.
Thank you both for taking the time for this. I think this, to your point, is a startup of a really good conversation that we all want to have to make sure that we improve and continue to grow our partnership with AMC. So thank you all again for all the work that you have been doing and the continued partnership between you all and the board. So really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.